Okay, so I have all of my template pieces cut out, and what I like to do before I head over to the sewing machine is find centers by pressing these in half, and then match centers and pin before I get to the actual sewing. So I'm gonna give these a quick press, and I like to find my center by folding and pressing so I get a nice crease that I can always find. There we go, so that's center for that template. Fold this one in half this way. This is template Z. Okay, and I will do the same for X. You could, of course, just finger press or fold and mark with a pencil or something, but I think it's easy to fold with your fingers and then give it a quick press. And I'll need 3 of these. So we have 2 X pieces for each Z template, and 1 X and 1 Y that pair together. So here I have template X and Y, and those will pair together, and ultimately they will overlap with their 1/4 inch seam and look like this. But what I need to do first is flip X onto Y, so the right side's together. I'm going to start by pinning my center. And then what I'm going to do is bring my edge over and pin it to the side here. And I'll do the same thing here so that my corners line up. Okay, and now I'm going to go in and just make sure that my curves continue to match up, and I'll do a couple more pins. So you'll see piece X starts to look a little bit funky. It's going to look a little bit wrinkled, but this is the edge that we need to look nice. So all this can stay flimsy for now. And I'm really making sure not to stretch my fabric too much as I match those edges up. And pinning will help prevent stretching when you go to sew them together as well. And if you want, you can of course adjust your pins so that everything is facing the same direction as you go along. Okay. So this is ready to go to my machine, and I'm going to be sewing my 1/4 inch seam along that edge. I'm going to set this aside, pin the next pair. So 2 X pieces will fit with 1 Z piece, and when they overlap with their 1/4 inch, this is what we'll get, that leaf shape. But we have to do these one at a time because we'll do one, we'll press it, and then we'll fold the other one in. So I'm just gonna start with this edge, and same thing, I'm gonna fold, pair up those center points. Fabrics are right sides together. And I'm going to work my edge. You ultimately want this straight end of piece X to work into the point of Z. And you might find the more you do this, the less pins you need, or maybe no pins at all. It's totally up to you and your comfort level as you learn to sew curves. So again, I'm going to go back in and do a couple of more pins here. I'm not worried about how funny looking my X piece is. Okay, so I have this ready to go to my machine, and I have this ready to go to my machine. Okay, so I'm at my machine and I have my first block pinned and ready to go under my needle here. I'm just using a regular presser foot and I'm going for a 1/4 inch seam all the way around. So I'm going to start with a couple stitches, take out my first pin, and I'm just going to keep a hand here to guide and make sure that my top piece is continually lining up with the edge of my bottom piece. So a little bit, remove my pins as I go. If you start to feel puckering, you can sort of shift the fabric. Just making sure you try not to pull too much. There's my center point. See, I'm continuing to shift my top piece, make sure it stays where I want it. And then keeping my edges square as I come to the end here. Cut my thread and there we go. So there is our first 1/4 inch curve. And we'll take this over and we'll press this out and square it up in a minute. Let's go ahead and sew the other one. So again, I'm going to keep that corner pin in. Start with a couple of stitches. Slowly work my way around. There we go. So sometimes it might look like you have a pucker right here, but as long as it's smooth when you bring your finger over it and it didn't actually create a fold under your stitch line, you're good and you don't have a pucker when you press that open. Okay, so I'm gonna press this one and then we'll get the other side pinned onto. Okay, so I just pressed this piece back so that I can turn it around and attach my other X piece. So in the same way that I did the first one, I'm going to find that center line, fold right sides together, pin, shift, and this time you're going to want to overlap with the edge of the other X piece that you sewed on. So let's go ahead and sew the second curve. So same way that we did the first one. Start with a couple stitches. Okay, let's head back over to the ironing board, press these, and then we'll square everything up. Okay, so I'm back over at my ironing board here and I have these pieces that I've just sewn together. So what I'm going to do is press so that I'm folding X back, and so my seams are folded away from my Z and Y template pieces. And I'm just going to go very slowly. I'm not using steam. Steam will stretch your fabric. I'm trying not to wiggle my iron side to side too much, which would also stretch my fabric. Okay, so there is one block. And just like I've already pressed this one back, I'm going to do the same. See how I slowly sort of run my finger along that curve to press it back before I come in with the iron. That'll help give you a nice smooth curve that really follows your stitch line. Okay, so we have our 2 blocks, so let's go ahead and trim these. So for this pattern, I recommend having a 6.5 inch square ruler. Each of these blocks is 6.5 inches, so I think this is a really handy, quick way to trim. So I'm going to line up my ruler. What I'm looking for here is that I have a 1/4 inch seam here and up here. And I'm just going to trim off any little excess that I have along those points. You might find that your fabric shifts up and out a little bit as you sew, but there really shouldn't be much trimming. Ooh. You're really just sort of cleaning up and squaring everything. So I just have little bits here. Okay, so that is one block. And for the second block, same thing. You want to make sure that this point meets up at a 1/4 inch coming from both directions, here and here. Just got a little bit of excess there and a little bit down here. Okay, so now I have both of these blocks squared up and ready to go. So when you do sew these together, you're going to make sure that you're hitting your needle. You're going to come straight down the 1/4 inch side and hit right as these curves come to this point, so that ultimately your leaf shapes and your other drunkard's path shapes just turn out to be flush gradation corner to corner. And that's sewing curves. Take your time, go slowly, pin extra if you need to, and if you're feeling confident, go ahead and ditch those pins and just sort of adjust your outer pieces as you go. Good luck.